All right, guys, I hope you're pumped because we have a special guest with us today. Her name is Sarah Elkhaldy. She is a claircognizant spiritual teacher and energy healer, and you might recognize her from the popular YouTube channel, The Alchemist. So we won't make you wait any longer. Let's get right into it. I think maybe a great place to begin would be with your about page on your YouTube channel, because it kind of describes a bit of what you do. It says that you're like a claircognizant, and your show is kind of like, it's called The Alchemist. And I was wondering, we were both wondering, how did you discover this for yourself? And maybe tell our audience a little bit like how you got into this journey.
How I got into this journey was a burning desire for truth of the reality that I occupied. So I had always been philosophically inclined or existentially inclined. And then deeper into my journey, it became more spiritually inclined. So it kind of like transformed from philosophical or existentialism into spirituality, but not first through going through quite a matrix.
Yeah.
So I didn't know that I had been on a spiritual journey all my life. And it definitely wasn't the goal of mine while I had first started awakening to really even be considered spiritual or to talk about spiritual concepts. It always was led by, once again, a burning desire for truth.
Well, great place to begin, that's for sure. Now,
Yeah.
the gift of claircognizance, believe it or not, when we first discovered it, we had to look it up because I had heard of the term clairvoyance before, but I'd never heard of the term claircognizant. How do you define that? What, like, because I'm sure people kind of have their own little definitions for it. How do you define that?
It's when you don't know how you know or why you know, but you just know. And so, really, to get more into it than just that, claircognizance is the fully developed, full fruition of all of the clairs, of all the
Okay.
psychic capacities. It kind of
Oh, wow.
transforms into silence. It kind of
Hmm.
transforms into invisibility. And so it looks maybe perhaps from the outside or on the surface as like, wow, that sounds fun. You just go up to people, tell them stuff and say, I don't know. Don't like that sounds like it's ripe for irresponsibility, but it's the culmination of all of them. And so what I will be addressing more in my channel coming up is some of the capacities, the abilities that are coming online right now for all of us. But of my personal opinion, every person, unless you're like a psychopath, is clairsentient and has unrealized clairsentience, if not realized clairsentience. So they either know that they're clairsentient already, or they just have no connection with it, but that does not mean that it is lost. It's just unhoned. You know, you have to hone in on these things, you have to develop them. But the reason why I'm bringing up clairsentience in relationship with claircognizance is because many times a person may be aware that they're clairsentient to a certain degree and call themselves an empath.
Okay. Right.
Empath is, I would say, a little bit different than clairsentience, but it's in the same family, shall we say. And yet, they may just feel like honing one ability doesn't lead to another, or that honing one ability is better than one another. But clairsentience can lead to claircognizance.
Okay. Very interesting. First, believe it or not, the thing that stood out to me was that you mentioned that a psychopath wouldn't be able to hone clairsentience. And it gets me to thinking that like reverse engineer that, and it sounds like the path towards honing more claircognizance or clairsentience would like an approach would be honing empathy. It's on its own, like becoming a more empathetic individual, or tapping into empathy to some degree. Is that fair to say at all? Or
Yes, that is very fair. So even psychopathy, esotericism has a very clear and undisputed, nobody really disputes it in esotericism about psychopathy. But outside of esotericism, there can be an argument or a debate about, is there such a thing as a genuine psychopath or not? Or are we seeing and observing extraordinarily traumatized individuals?
that's
Now,
what I always assumed.
yeah, well, it's both. In
Mm.
esotericism, there is clear, like, indicators of psychopathy. That is what you would call perhaps unredeemable, but not because it's trying to be rude and forsaken. Unredeemable because it was a soul choice at a soul level coming into this experience to take out the connection to a person's empathy. So from that angle, psychopathy, it was a choice coming into this experience, and they're playing out that choice. But then you have more gray zone, you have more gray area, and that's, there's genuinely traumatized, severely traumatized individuals who have had to disassociate so much from their humanity, from their empathy, from their emotional body and experience, that then you're dealing with people who are not only sociopaths, but even verging on like, wow, I can't distinguish you from a psychopath. So it's
Yeah.
both.
Yeah. Is there like a pull there when you discovered that you were claircognizant? Was there like a pull to go help people? Is that like the next step that kind of like organically stems out of that?
Oh no, I came in with that.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Okay.
came in with a Superman savior complex from day one.
Yeah. Oh
Like I
yeah.
was poor as hell, and I was still like, how can I save everyone? Like
Right.
I always
Yeah.
imagined myself with a cape on invisibly when I was like in elementary school. And so in my head, I was like, I'm wearing a cape. It was just my invisible cape.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful, and it seems like you might have naturally been very empathetic for that to be the desire of your heart going into it. Yeah, it's so interesting, this idea of, because I like to think that everybody's redeemable to some degree, and it's interesting to consider these things. Sometimes I would imagine it's a bit of a hard sell explaining, when science fails us to explain something, to say that, this is a soul contract that some people have made, kind of binding them to an outcome. Like, what do you a good thing that was told to me once was, I try not to judge people on their diagnosis. I try to judge them by their actual actions. So maybe at the end of the day, the most simple thing is to just simply look at how somebody's behaving, before we, judge them too harshly, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Well, that's funny because that's what I consider a curse. A
Oh,
curse
geez.
is when, oh, I mean this musingly.
Yeah.
A curse is when we say you cannot change. So if you look at somebody and you say you can never change, you can never grow, you're
Right.
cursing them whether you know them or not. That doesn't have actually an impact on their journey, or that doesn't reveal a truth about their journey. But so it's not a literal curse you're placing on them, but it is a curse that you are saying. That's at least my definition of a curse.
Yeah.
So it's not meant to curse people and say there's no hope for you, you're hopeless, others are. It's more so about even judging someone's actions would be even more cursing them, because there's so many who are acting like psychopaths that would check all of the boxes of action and
Yeah.
yet can be redeemed.
Yeah. I
Oh,
heard
yeah.
recently that the frequency of people being narcissists has gone way up, and that for a long time it was more typical for men to be narcissistic, and that actually women have caught up in that regard. And I wonder, like, what do you happen to think about some of these attributes, some of these maybe negative characteristics, as like a growing trend in society nowadays, or something like, where does it shift from sort of like a clinical psychological assessment to a spiritual one? Is what's happening? Are things getting better, or are things getting worse?
I'm actually surprised to hear that, statistically speaking, narcissism has gone up. How I would frame that, though, is more so that narcissism may have transmuted its form because there's so like the shadow of mankind has been covert narcissism. So back before we had social media and we were able to even talk about these things and learn about being trauma informed or even learn about chemicals inside our cereal, there was traumatized children that grew up to be adults because they had covert narcissists parents, and that was rampant.
Yeah.
So if anything now, if it's being brought to the light, I would say it was something that was always there. It may have shifted its form now. So now people are looking at their way of going about this narcissism in a different way because times have changed and now we can point a camera at ourselves and do it, you know? So, but yeah, narcissism has always been alive and well.
Yeah. The claircognizant thing, is this something that, like, were you suggesting earlier that this is something that we can all kind of tap into? Or is it something special, unique to certain people?
I think for some, it's more natural. They just came in with it stronger. It's more innate to them.
Yeah.
But because it is the culmination of all the clair abilities, all of our
Yeah.
psychic abilities, if a person were to hone in and develop their psychic capacities in this life, they would naturally kind of have a ripple effect or a cascade effect.
What are the tools that, like, could help someone, like, manifest or build those skills? Like,
Yeah, that's what the spiritual community loves. I should probably even just do a mystery school on that, but I would have to download them literally because I didn't need them this life. Um, Tantric practices. Now I know that sexual practices got really associated with Tantra, but that is a very small sliver of a segment of Tantra. And even the
okay.
term Tantra is Western. We called that there when we brought these practices over. So even that name is Westernized. But, anyways, Tantric practices are all centered around developing psychic abilities. So if you don't want to wait for me to make videos about it, you can start looking into tantric practices because all of them, and I could go on and on and on. So just tell me when to stop, but they could talk about like focus on the center spot, your third eye area. And then you could start doing breathing exercises at that point to start pushing the energy up in that center. That's just one of many. There's so many different practices to really be able to connect the physiological, the physical function of our spiritual organs
Yeah.
with opening them, with activating them at a higher capacity.
Yeah.
That's what typically we're looking at when we're looking at practices designed to awaken our psychic abilities.
Is this like tied with like some like yogic practices that,
Yeah.
because I've like when we've looked at kundalini and stuff before, I see like a lot of kundalini stuff is centered around exactly what you're talking about, like envisioning things in your sashimi and like trying to like, you know, envision things opening and energy flow and all that stuff.
Yeah, the Kundalini journey is a really fickle beast, but um, they're entwined. They're very entwined.
Okay. That was so interesting.
Kundalini
Oh,
goes with-
sorry.
Oh no, go on.
I was just going to say I was caught by you saying I haven't downloaded something, and that it made me think of the Matrix. And so I'm not sure I know what it is to download information. Is there? Can you speak on that a little bit?
You ought to because you're doing it all the time.
Oh,
Yeah. So when we get inspiration, that can be a download. I don't know a better term for this age because I don't like equating ourselves with technology
right.
simply because when it's done so much, then we start actually not being able to distinguish ourselves from technology. But I always come back to downloads because it's just the easiest. I mean, I guess I'm a creature of my age. I guess, we
Yeah.
deal with that in this age. And, if I was in the medieval age, I'd be like, oh, I
Yeah.
just got a demon.
Yeah. Yeah, and the more you talked about it, I was like, actually, yeah. On second thought, I think I do download stuff because I'm a kind of a creative person. So maybe, like you said, it spoke to me when you said inspiration can come that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be about just allowing your like preparing for yourself the most optimistic or opportunistic area or place for that to happen. Because I think obviously, if we're too over busy and we are always on the move and never stop to kind of like take a time for some downloading, uh, maybe we would have a harder time, I guess, recognizing it or achieving it.
Well, also, stillness plays a very strong role, which is what you were also in a way saying, which is
Yeah.
about taking time out. Stillness plays a very strong role because what I've noticed in a lot of people is that they're striving. And a part of that striving creates more of a gap. So,
Yeah.
what I don't do anymore because I'm, I guess, completely aligned with the flow and the nature of me, of my purpose, my dharma, is that when I'm supposed to know something, it comes.
Yeah.
So it's okay if I don't know something, and I might look like a know-it-all, and to an extent about I mean, if you ask me about my car, I'm
Mm.
not a know-it-all.
Mm.
But about certain things, that it's because it makes sense when it makes sense, or it comes when it comes. And if I'm curious, that's even it's wanting to come through. So even if I'm curious and I don't know, I don't freak out about that gap yet. I'm not instantly in fear or anxious about that gap between my curiosity and the knowing. And
Mm.
because I have that type of flow with it, I don't perceive myself as separate as many people are who want to be able to have more connection and have more downloads.
Right.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's amazing.
one thing I was curious about is I know like a lot of your content on your YouTube channel, it has to do with the structure of our reality and how it works. Is there an easy or a basic, like a 101 way of explaining that in a way that maybe some of our viewers, because we have people from all different types of walks of life watch our channel because we cover so many topics. Um, is there like a basic structure or something that you could maybe give someone who's kind of newly getting into this?
Yeah, so the best structure would be to understand that we're in a universe of light. So
Okay.
everything in this universe revolves around light. And that's expressed through vibration, sound, photons. So it's on all levels. Um, Voice is light, just in a different frequency. So it boggles the mind to be able to understand the vastness of wait, whatever we think actually is just still changing, but also only in this universe of light, and that there's something outside of light. And yeah, that's cool if it doesn't make you claustrophobic. And if it does, it's like, well, you don't got to worry about that.
I
Just,
love that you use the word claustrophobic because that's so rarely talked about. And I guess I was having an insight one time where I realized we ought to be so grateful for kind of whatever limits we actually have because if you get in touch with infinity, like the nature of being infinite, sometimes I get the sense that there could be this uh, almost like a claustrophobia associated with infinite potential, infinite expansion, all these different things, like in just sort of a counterintuitive way. You know, like maybe part of the thing to be grateful for in this plane of existence is mundane tasks and some of the things we take for granted, if that makes sense.
yes, it's this is where God comes to sleep, if not
Yeah,
forget.
yeah, yeah.
Or
Makes sense.
if not, be in fear of its own self.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I've heard you talk about like densities and stuff before. Is there some tie between the downloads or the insights that you get and say something like the law of one? Because I noticed some parallels there. I think some of the content.
Yeah, there's quite a few different channeled material that refers and perceives this reality through densities. And I resonate more with that. Law of One wasn't the only one, but what you'll notice is that calling things that we typically call dimensions, which I have no issue with, it's really like I don't care, but what we see as dimensions would actually be better described, if we're going to get technical about the wording of what's being referred to, as densities, simply because of the different experiences and the different forms taken at each level. So it would be more of a density. And how the best way to describe that would be like, by the time you get, imagine like an elevator dropping, floor by floor by floor, and each floor would be a density. So by the time you go down the elevator to the third density, you're in quite an experience of denseness, literally.
Okay. All right. You cover so many topics on your channel, and I would be, it wouldn't be accurate for me to say I understood always everything that's being said. There's so much. What would you say is the most actionable thing somebody from our audience might take away from, what is the most important aspect of the message that you might have for people?
The most important message would probably be that we are both source. We are source, and we are an aspect, a unique aspect, a unique expression of source. The reason why I think that's so important is because a lot of what's hindering human consciousness or human evolution at this time is this either or mentality, or this inability to fully embody the connections that we desire. And I'll be more specific. We really put on a pedestal certain things that we want to put above us, or we'll feel safer if it's like a buffer between us and our eternal and infinite nature. And because of that, we don't take full responsibility. We just go, see, like almost like a sports game. Like, you know how we vicariously root for a player, and then our player is the one and they made us proud. It's whatever the thing is that made us proud. Oh, no, we don't have to be that. We don't have to actualize that. No. That's not for self to realize. It's that. And with that, you can only have, even if it's innocent, a distortion. So even if you do the math, you started off with the wrong numbers or the wrong way of computing it, you will get some form of ill manifestation as that reflection. So I'm just saying that, going like, let's go to the source code, shall we?
Yeah. Well, as a springboard off of what you were talking about there with the world and everything, the world is in quite a state right now. And I'm curious, like, should we be looking forward to what's to come, or do we need to go through some hard times in order to remedy some of the problems we have, or a little bit of everything? Yeah.
Both, yeah. So in the state of the world, I wasn't gonna do an annual update, but after recent events, I'll be doing an annual update for this coming year, because it's quite crucial. I don't know what spiritual veins you guys subscribe to, but 2025 is pretty much known in many different spiritual circles as being a quite pivotal year, if not apocalyptic. And I have not been able to get around that either. My gnosis agrees, which is, I rarely agree with people. So
yeah.
Oh, great. You had to agree on one thing. You had to be that. So 2024 is one that really is going to ask us to step into our self-sovereignty, like next level, because it will determine a lot of the things that you were talking about. Like, how is it going to go? Is this bad? Is this like, what's that? But yeah, so to be a little less vague, what we're seeing right now is a lot of energy that's happening that is leading people to conjure, to help co-create war, but that
Mm.
doesn't need to be co-created. And it's not as simple as just stop focusing on it. It's more so about the awareness of what's happening. And that awareness of what's happening is going to help a person understand, oh, they're trying to imprint this in my subconscious so that I submit and consent to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you're sovereign, you don't have to turn a blind eye. You're not scared of what's happening in the world and going, don't look at it or else you're going to create it. Instead, you're aware of what's happening, but you are revoking any type of energetic pull into the co-creation of it. And so what you will unfortunately see is a lot of people who want to play prophet because they're just playing the gambling games of the odds. They're going to see a certain amount of momentum go into war, so start prophesizing war. And that's the worst thing you could ever ask for in a spiritual teacher,
Yeah.
spiritual leader, or a prophet.
Yeah. It's almost, yeah, it sounds like you up the chances of manifesting that.
Well,
And I
at
really,
it costs, you're putting your ego before helping
yeah.
humanity become sovereign and create something else. There's nothing more narcissistic than that.
Yeah, yeah, and but I mean, it's interesting because, like, I've spoken to a couple of people that seem to have acquired a certain peace. You know, like heavy meditators. You know, I've acknowledged something in my own self when I've actually been able to carve out a certain amount of time to get still and meditate. And sometimes there's a kind of a detachment from worldly things that I find I have found myself in, and sometimes I regard in others. And sometimes when the topic of where is the planet headed, are we doomed or are we going to pull through in the end? Sometimes there's kind of a disconnected, like, well, it doesn't really matter either way, and you know, it's all perfect anyway type attitude. But in terms of taking responsibility, I imagine it's a little bit difficult for people. You know, I don't believe people lean towards the bad aspects of reality without, you know, I don't see that happens with no good reason. You know, maybe there's a temptation, or maybe people are scared or taken over by that sort of thing. But I like what you said about remaining sovereign, and what is something to encourage people to remain sovereign and to not give in to what might tempt them to be a contributor to some sort of bad outcome.
How you said that it's not so much about disattaching or disconnecting, that there has to be a certain level of that. And it, however a person receives this will be at their own level of consciousness. I don't say this in a heartless way, but a person has to come fully face to face with their death, and therefore also the death of the world. Because once you're able to have that level of acceptance and surrender, now you can do what you need to do in the world without being so attached to the outcome. And I think that is something that may be really hard, the paradox of that for people to understand.
Seems like people are terrified of that what you just said there. Like that's a hard thing to come to grips, I think, with your immortality, man. That's not a small task. It might be one of the biggest tasks.
Well, absolutely. I went through that. I'm a horrible prepper because, like, 15 years ago, I was like, oh my God, a financial crisis. So I went and I bought, like, not even ground coffee. I bought coffee beans because I was going to have a grounder. Bag. And I bought like 1 hydrogen peroxide, and then I just gave up. And I went, all right, screw this. And that was the best thing to happen to me, because after I was like, I don't even want to live in a reality with people who are good at prepping. If I suck at prepping, there's a purpose. And it's not to go find people who are good at prepping. It's to go be in a different reality from them.
It was bananas when COVID hit. Like, I was helping people get freezers to load with meat and all kinds of stuff. And I was like, well, I know where I'm coming if I run out of... No, but it's I resonate with what you said there. You know, I don't.
It's a spiritual prepping. After a certain point, it's all in. It's not like, oh, I'm half in, I'm half that. Now, I'm not saying to not stock up on whatever a person feels like will keep them safe. Go get all the water you want. Go get all the powdered food you want. Go get whatever.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that there is a distinctly different energy of having a plan versus living in a prepper consciousness, prepper
Yeah.
reality. And all of my preparation without me trying to, just what I was led to by my own self and my own, creative journey. I was led into spiritual prepping. And I'd say that if there's one thing that I've done a great job in my life, it's spiritual prepping, because I do not care whatever happens in the world, but yet I'm so invested and I so care for the world.
That's the right attitude. And
Yeah.
I think that is the best attitude to have.
I'm someone who's like starving for like the next golden age of humanity. If we could like if more people on earth could believe that that is possible, would that be what we manifested? Would we make that happen if we could get, cuz to me it feels like everything that we almost consume nowadays, whether it's media or whatever is coming from our technology, even our mindsets, seems to be caught up in negativity all the time. If we could somehow shift that, couldn't we create for ourselves maybe something beautiful?
Yes, absolutely. But for golden ages, that would be like a distinct density. So to get to that density, remember the elevator, it would be like a semi-physical form. It would not be in this dimension as we experience reality like this. So there's a fifth dimensional, and I'll weave it into the golden age.
Yeah.
There's a fifth dimensional consciousness, and that's what we want to embody. Fifth dimensional consciousness is different from shifting to a fifth dimension or fifth density. That's a different experience. And so
that's like Christ consciousness on earth, right? Kind of. Yeah.
So embodying fifth dimensional consciousness, Christ consciousness, whatever have you, is very real, and it's the assignment. It is what a being who has polarized or moved towards awakening ought to be embodying, and it's not for a select few. It is the assignment. I should qualify that, though. It's an easy assignment. It's not, for this lifetime, because there's been much lifetime in the works of this lifetime. So we're not starting from scratch.
Yeah.
So because of that, the fifth dimensional consciousness will still have what we would consider a lot of challenges, trials, and tribulations. And it would not be the accurate golden age, the way that golden age is portrayed in mysticism, but it would be what I still consider a new earth. So sometimes people are linking up the fifth dimension with the new earth, or they're linking up the new earth with the golden age.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's like, well, which one is it, and which one is what's going on, and what do these mean? And actually just talking about this tells me that this is what I need to make a video on. So this is why I have a deal with spirit. I don't care about anything until somebody comes into my world and asks a question or says something. And then I go, oh, that's what I'm supposed to help bring awareness to. And so just this is a great topic, because a lot of times we could be on the same page or not be on the same page, and it'll just have to do with terminology. And so golden age, I would define as being a distinct density that, if we're looking for that to manifest in this lifetime, no. But are we shifting to a new earth, meaning a new way of being that is of a fifth dimensional consciousness? Absolutely.
Good.
Oh, good news.
That's good news.
Oh. All right. Star seeds. You've talked about star seeds on your channel before. I'm new to this. What is a star seed?
A star seed is a higher density resident who has a resident of higher densities, who has incarnated into the human experience, into the human form in this lifetime with a specific purpose and a specific mission. And that is to generally, this is very general, help raise the collective consciousness on Earth in some form.
How do you know if you're a starseed or not? Like, how would anyone know that? Is that knowledge that just comes to you, or?
You really resonate. It's one of those things where if you hear it, you start becoming activated by that. It's not new. It's something where it's like a vague dream.
You recognize it.
Wait. Yeah. Hearing about it activates a remembrance.
I don't think I'm a starseed. Sometimes I think I might be a bit of a Zen devil, but
You're very kind, because usually people who don't resonate or who don't get activated by that or don't have any type of pull towards starseeds just go, wow, you guys are effing crazy. Have fun.
No, not at all. I mean, the only thing that's crazy is that the only thing I suppose find crazy is too much certainty. You know, to me, I believe in being open-minded, and I feel like for my own self, that was something my whole life I struggled being the person asking a lot of questions and sometimes being shushed to not ask so many questions, you know, which is why I say I probably feel a little bit like a rascal sometimes, you know what I mean? Like, because I just see so much bifurcation in reality, so much of there's two sides to every story, essentially. And so the idea of non-duality, I guess, is interesting to me. You know, some ultimate truth.
So I'm not sure if you guys have seen my avatar level consciousness. I was going to say music video. My video.
I don't know if I've seen it.
Avatar level consciousness just came to me. It's really just another way of saying enlightenment, but I'm trying to create new sensations out of things so that we don't become numb to the same wording, which is happening and has happened. So in avatar level consciousness, a being starts not only seeing other people's perspectives, and that's tedious because not you guys maybe, but the average person would probably just like to be validated in their perspective and not have to see someone else's, because that's a lot of work. Having to see someone else's perspective. But then that starts expanding even more. It doesn't just stop there. And then you start seeing things from not just even multiple perceptions, which is quite tedious. It starts expanding even more, and you start seeing things from cosmic perspectives and universal perspectives. And so when you said the two sides to the truth, when you start expanding more and more, that's quite tedious, because it's not even two at that point. And at that point, it takes a lot of surrender to the awe.
Surrender to the awe. Yeah.
I find life so much more fascinating when you do what you were just talking about, when you can get out of your box. Because I feel like I've lived in both places in my life. I've lived in a tight-knit little box before with my little bubble of beliefs, and I'm much happier, you know, being able to hear multiple perspectives and hear what other people have to say. You learn more about the world and you learn more about yourself. At least that's my experience.
Yeah. It's interesting because when I do a video now, I have such a diverse audience, which is a reflection of all of the paradigms that I see things through, coming from that larger multiple perspective, that sometimes people get pissed off because I don't give them a final answer at the end. But I can give a final clarity when it's called. I give a final clarity when it's called, but sometimes if I don't feel called for that, it can irritate people. And I'm laughing, going like, you just want to be told what something is when it's more complex than that, and it's actually a part of our sovereignty to be able to maturely understand this and its complexity. And it's like almost like I was cheating, like she didn't even whatever. And it's like, it's not cheating if you're allowing a person to understand all the sides of something such as complex as the demiurge, one example of many, and then be able to hold that information and knowledge into someone's hands and then say, as a sovereign being, what would you choose?
Yeah, it's hilarious. It's like this infinite nature of reality, and you want like an answer to be in some perfect little package for you that like this finite human construct or whatever can just, oh, I got it. I figured out reality. I got it all.
And
It
much
just
less
seems
I
so-
cheated.
I know.
Yeah.
I would really be cheating individuals if I told them, look, because I came from a Gnostic background, the demiurge is evil. That would
Yeah.
be cheating.
Yeah, that's the lazy way out. I love that you use the word mature to say that, because it does seem like a bit of a mature thing. I think that understanding comes along with seeing other perspectives, is like understanding where people are at and why. And I wish there was more of that in the world. I wish that there was a actionable way of seeing more of that. And it also leads a little bit into it. For some reason, it makes me think about spiritual ego. The idea that maybe as you develop, you get more spiritual and you mature a little bit. And then I know I've dealt with this, is almost gaining, well, not almost, definitely getting frustrated sometimes with the way things are. And, I think a good way to be is exuding love, radiating love and understanding. But sometimes, I suppose, I can fall into a state of almost like a righteous indignation or frustration with the way things are. What's a good way to sort of combat that, I suppose?
Who said righteous indignation is a state that is not love? And who said righteous indignation is a state that is lesser than the other state that you had mentioned?
I said it.
If I was, let's say, let's go to the worst, shall we? Just because it will be easier. If I was a trafficked human, I would pray for more people in the world to have righteous indignation.
Yeah.
So maybe source is most in their active form with that Prometheus fire.
Yeah. Okay. That answers it.
Here is a quick, but I'm guessing deep question from the insights that you have acquired. What is death from the human experience?
So
Is that a bad question?
no, it's not a bad question. It's like, don't say transformation while you explain. It's kind of just like funny for me to try to navigate that without saying the word transformation, but it's a transformation. Death is the transformation of our finite consciousness into a new consciousness. So it's simply just the shifting doors of consciousness.
And then is there like a rebirthing process again? Like if you're shifting consciousness, are you going from one like shell to another or avatar to another avatar? What is the process? What is happening?
The process is always a recalibration. So like the opposite of that would be what you see ghosts. Ghosts would be the lack of that recalibration process, that attachment to the experience that they once had, the earthbound, which is why they're called earthbound, so much so that they cannot go through that recalibration process, that balancing process. And so, or sometimes they can't even perceive it, which is why my shaman taught me, but which is why shamans teach how to open a portal of light so that some can just even go to the light. And we can have a whole discussion about, well, what the false light, but it's like, hey, anything's better than earthbound at this point.
Sounds awful.
Yeah. So what death is, or the process after, is a recalibration process. And it's recalibrating, meaning it's processing that lifetime. It's processing the emotional body within that lifetime. It's processing the intentions what was gained. It's extracting, it's turning everything into like the wisdom. It's extracting everything from idea or intent to how that translated out. Like, could be like, hey, I intended to be this like really great person, and it translated out to, oh man, I was awful. So it contains a lot, but it's a balancing process, balancing on all levels. So it's balancing mental, meaning everything I just said, but also balancing perceptions, which is why so many people, when they go into NDEs, they see um, other perceptions like afterlife stuff. But it's also on the emotional body. If there should be anything, in my personal opinion, that ought to be the most like centered around, it would be how to die well. I don't even know if we could talk about these things though, because everything's so sensitive. I got a community guidelines. I get them once every 6 months, which sucks, but I got one last year about something just very, very, very safe is what I would say about death. And I got a ding on my account for that on one of my social media platforms. So that taught me, oh, I can't say nothing about it.
I bet it's because you're doing so well. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like sometimes things go under the radar, the less eyeballs you have on you, but you've got a pretty growing channel, whole thing going on. So
Yeah.
And it sucked because it was a silly joke too. So I was like, wow, imagine if I was going to lay down some serious knowledge about this.
Yeah. Jeez.
I'm getting it out of my system now. I say some pretty outlandish things sometimes. But
When you were talking about the consciousness there, is consciousness like a fractaled section of the main source of all reality or light, as you're describing? Is it one cutout piece? Like I think you said, experiencing this reality, and if it is it evolving and is it moving up to get back to itself? Like, because I'm curious.
Yeah, so that would be one way of looking at it, and mysticism would agree. It would be, we go into involution, which I have a video on involution if you want to watch that, and then we go into evolution. And even within involution, there's evolution, and even within evolution, there's involution. But essentially, that fragmentation and then that unification and integration is kind of seen as like an arc, a story arc of source, and is put in many different traditions. And so that's one way. I feel like I have outgrown that, and not because I've genuinely outgrown it. I feel bound to it. So I'm trying to like cognizant, I'm trying to summon, I'm trying to connect with larger aspects of truth, because that's what I do. When I learn a system or fully integrate it, I want to know what's next. But that seems to be the most, if I had to call anything safe, that would be it. So that's one way of looking at it. It's what you had said, that it's a fractalized consciousness of light. Another way, a more interesting way, a more risky way, would be, what if we're just in one paradigm, which we're calling light, but once we come out of that light, we were like, oh, I was in Frank. Okay, now explore me.
Yeah.
I like that one.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. It's just like looking through different windows almost.
Yeah.
I noticed in one of the videos I was watching, I looked at quite a few of your videos, and I was caught by something where you were talking about personality and the personality of the universe, or the personality of reality, and personal personality. And one of the things that I toyed with in my own meditative practices and introspection, and then kind of getting some separation from my ego, is sort of the illusory nature of I guess what I'd say like identity or personality, trying to get separate from that. But, you know, just to kind of briefly go back to what you were asking about the death process, like, consciousness on its own, like, I mean, when I sleep, there are times when I come out of it and I'm like, that was wonderful. I was not conscious at all. But what goes on? What moves on past this reality? What are we getting in touch with if it isn't our sort of illusory identities or our you know, our very physical senses of things? You know, what is spirit at the end of the day, you know? And I know you mentioned it being about light or synonymous with light or something like that, but is our personalities eternal, or is that all fiction, you know?
So it's both, because spirit is also known in mysticism, particularly in animism, which is the mother of all religions, or the original religion.
Yeah.
As personality. And so we always have with anything a more base or a more base expression, and then we have a more exalted expression. And so the base expression is something that so many different spiritual, like the whole spiritual journey is essentially about healing or some form of becoming aware of something, doing with the base personality, some form of dissembling the base personality. And that's what ought to be done. That's the ego. So the ego hides within a personality, and that's their false self. That's what they want. That's their hopes and dreams. That's their hopes and fears that they project into this culmination, this shell that we could call the personality. That ought to be put in the alchemical fire. The exalted form of personality would just be spirit, or would just be, you know, spirit's also known as ether. So it's just that essence that intrinsically exists. So once existence chooses to be, once it goes into its active and not its passive state, the active side of infinity, good luck trying to hide from personality.
Okay. I'm sure I'm gonna watch this again a few times because there's a lot of your content. It's funny because you even warn your viewers, like, you're probably gonna have to watch my stuff a few times, which I'm glad you do, because yeah, it's loaded content, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. Inside of that explanation that you were just talking about right there, is that what enlightenment is? Is that what awakening is for you?
It's the non-attachment. It's the understanding you're more than this. So you're the stillness. You're the no-thingness, but you're choosing to play.
Yeah.
So I say in one of my lines of poetry in one of my books, I say, when you find out life is a game, will you stop playing? Because a lot of times, even clients come to me with the problem of, what's the point then? What's the point? I woke up enough to know that this is in shambles and should not be. This should not be existing. So what's the point? And I said, you're right. Because I'm an existentialist. So you're right. But the point is to then, at that point, assign it meaning. If you find out life is a game, will you stop playing, or will you just assign it a meaning? I decided to assign it an extravagant meaning.
Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah, which is, to me, I've always found more liberating anyway, because a lot of people, they're tied to a meaning that they haven't chose, that someone has chosen for them. And I think it's liberating to discover that you create your own meaning yourself individually. Like that, to me, that's awesome. On kind of like a fun note, your show's very intense, a lot of really cool subjects, but I'm sure maybe your fans out there, they might be curious, what does Sarah do with her free time? What's it like being the alchemist in your off time?
I don't have any off time. I love my job so much so. I
So what you do is your off time. It's kind of like what we do.
like looking like I'm bothering people for like a new intro. I'm like, hey, okay, now can I get that intro? The first part like that, then the second part, can you change it? And so like I just always refine the things because this is, to be quite frank, the first time in my life that I've been abundant. And so I go and I bother the people at Sammy's Camera to always upgrade my equipment.
I love it.
I love that
I'm
answer.
like looking on eBay for shirts and stuff and
Yeah.
getting like really nice stuff for cheap prices. So everything is career. I'm just grateful because I have the resources for it.
Yeah, I always said I want to find something that, keeps me up all night working on. I want to find something that I can dedicate all my action towards. And if that's being more Christ-like and stuff like that, and being a positive force in the world, I love that. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you seem definitely busy with all your work. I would, I guess, springboard off of that last content and just say, or comment and just say, maybe you could let our audience know where they can find you, what you got going on, and how they can find your stuff.
Yeah, so you can find me at my passion project on YouTube, The Alchemist. I believe my handle is like official The Alchemist or something of that vein. I highly recommend signing up for my newsletter. That's where I can stay in touch with people most directly about any upcoming events or retreats or what have you. And so that would be on my website, thealchemist.community.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I also have a very large social media presence on Instagram, the.alchemist. The reason why I kind of am a little reluctant to give that out is because I have so many imposter accounts that when I tell people, yeah, go check me out on Instagram, I'm the.alchemist, you run into like 6 different alchemists that are telling you about ancestral readings and donations.
have your picture, probably some of them.
Oh, jeez.
Yes.
I don't know. I've never had an imposter thing, but it sounds. Yeah.
And they say like, blessings, beloved.
Oh,
And I'm like, blessings, beloved. Oh, no, you say that.
Oh, well, that's awesome. Sarah, I want to just say thanks so much for coming on the show. This was great having you. And I guess good luck to your endeavors and saving the world.
Well, likewise. And thank you guys for your contribution to this as well.
All right, great. Thank you so much.
Have a good night.